It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That's Alan Saunders. If you enjoyed the song that you were just listening to, tell a friend to tell a friend that we are 66 subscribers away from listening to about a minute and 30 rendition of that same song. Alan, what's going on?
I think we're more excited about it than the viewers.
Oh, absolutely.
At this point, but I'm excited. It's beautiful football weather. It's football season. The leaves here on the south side are changing. And I think we have a good show today. I think we've got a lot of good stuff going on and coming up. I'm hyped. Let's get into it.
We have a good show today. As you can see, Alan is driving right now. I believe he's actually heading to Houston to be able to get ready to play tackle for them on Sunday with the state of the Houston Texans offensive line. Today, we learned that not only is Laremy Tunsil on track to miss his third consecutive game with a knee injury, the backup option there, Josh Jones, who they brought over from Arizona this past offseason with a hand injury, is not expected to be able to go. So I just got off the phone. They're seeing how quickly I can get in there and start getting into the playbook and stuff. You're on your way there now. I don't know that I like our chances against Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt on Sunday, but in all reality, that offensive line is basically Shaq Mason and some duct tape right now.
The duct tape includes rookie Jarrett Patterson, who's a 6th-round pick, and Kendrick Green, both starting at center and guard. This is a very, very bad offensive line, and it should be one that the Steelers should be able to feast upon, both in stopping the run and I think in the pass rush. I think the Steelers have played some tough matchups so far, and even the Raiders, while they are not an overall good team, they have some good players. I feel like this is the time when this is a matchup the Steelers should win and win easily. Don't you get that? Like I just feel like this should be like, this is the first game I'm going into. Like the Steelers should kind of roll in this one.
It almost makes you wonder, like, I don't know, did you watch any of that Texans-Jaguars game? Like, what in the world is going on with the Jaguars that they weren't even able to get near CJ Stroud?
Hang on, we got to stop this whole podcast right now. There's a car in front of me with a license plate, a vanity license plate, AIR, AIR, we go, WEGO, which if you've never been to Pittsburgh, doesn't seem to make any sense. But when you can get it in the little, there we go.
Yeah. Does the vehicle look any, is there anything cool about the vehicle? It's just a license plate.
It's black,
yeah.
But it's
okay.
But points for that. I applaud the combination of Steeler fandom and the Yinzer accent being utilized in that way. I'm appreciative of that. Sorry, where were we? I just had to stop.
No, I was with the state of the Texans offensive line. It almost makes you wonder what in the world happened on Sunday with the Jaguars that they weren't able to get.
A bunch of dumb stuff. Their fullback returned a kickoff for a touchdown. Trevor Lawrence threw an interception right to a guy. It was one of those dumb stuff games where it's kind of like the Steelers against the Niners, where so much bad happened that you can't even really learn anything from it because that much bad stuff is never going to happen to you again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I watched a little bit of that game. I didn't go back and watch it. There was no reason for me to look at it on tape or anything like that, but it did just seem like one of those games. But especially, you look at the advantage that the Steelers should have in the front seven, and like TJ Watt off to one heck of a start here. And I don't know that enough people are talking about it. I think maybe we're just taking the player too much for granted at this point. 6 sacks, 12 pressures.
His pass rush win rate isn't good enough.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why we're not mentioning him. His Hall of Fame pace to the start of, well, not just this season, but his career. But he's even way above that this year. Go ahead, read them off.
6 sacks, 12 pressures, 2 fumble recoveries, a defensive touchdown, couple pass deflections to add to that as well. If you want to bring in
season, that's a good season.
Well, he only had 5.5 sacks last year. I know he was limited last year.
He has more sacks in 3 games than he only missed 7 games last year. Mm-hmm. So he has more sacks this year in 3 games than he had last year in 10. He's not enough people are talking about how good TJ Watt has been this year. It is an absolutely historic pace to start the season. in terms of impact. And D'Amico Ryans, head coach of the Houston Texans, said today on our conference call, he thinks that TJ Watt is the most impactful defensive player in all of football right now. I can't see who would be second. Like he's running away with the defensive player of the year. It's 3 weeks. I understand it's early, but he's built up like a half season pace. 34 sacks. That's the pace. 34 sacks.
Yeah.
The record is 22 and a half.
Yeah.
And the 49ers have a good offensive line. Cleveland has a great offensive line. It's not like he's been playing against bad teams. I think people have taken TJ Watt for granted in some ways, and have kind of gotten numb to his greatness. But man, he has been incredible this year.
So we recorded an episode of Around the 412 last night, and Tyler asked me if I thought this was the best version of TJ Watt. And I don't want to take away from him. I think it is, but I don't want to take away from him when saying this. But I also start to look at, the supporting cast that he has with this version of Alex Highsmith on the other side, not just like the previous versions of Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith continuing to get better on his own. Marcus Golden behind them as a third edge rusher. I know we haven't seen a ton of Nick Herbig yet in the regular season, but I also just look at like the pass rush group that they have, and I can't think of the last time that they were this four deep at that position either.
Yeah, they're incredibly deep. He's staying fresher, I think. And J.J. Watt was on Pat McAfee's show today, and he was talking about how he just seems otherworldly focused on being great right now. And I think when you have a talented player who obviously has incredible physical talent, but when you take that with that absurd desire to be great, I think that's how you get what we're seeing from TJ Watt. I mean, JJ broke down one play against the Raiders. You may have noticed it where it was a play-action pass. It was the first sack of the game. TJ comes off his usual spot at left outside linebacker, just doesn't bite on the play-action at all, goes right around the tackle, who hadn't given up a pressure the entire season to that point, goes right around him like he's not even there, and makes the sack of Jimmy Garoppolo, first sack of Garoppolo this season. And he points over to the sideline, just, a very demonstrative point at the sideline. And JJ was like, I had to ask TJ, what did you see? What were you pointing at? And he said, TJ, they ran that play last year against the Raiders in December. The Raiders ran it, and he bit on the fake. And he said, he told Mike Tomlin this week, when they run that play again, I'm not going to bite on the fake this time. And then he sees the play coming, doesn't bite on the fake. It's one thing to see it, right? It's one thing to do detailed enough film stuff. I could, if you gave me all week to sit there and watch the Raiders with detail, I bet I could pick out a play. But then to get the one-on-one and smoke the tackle to do it, it's just a combination of incredible preparation along with talent. And when Mike Tomlin talks about how there's watching film and then they're studying it, I think that is really the that's it. That's all what it is right there. And so he gives a little point to Tomlin on the sideline after the sack, and then his second sack of the game is just it's the same thing, right? Where and TJ talked about this after the game about how the silent count at home helps the pass rushers. Well, you see the Raiders working on a silent count, and as soon as that center picks his head up, he's going to snap the ball, and TJ just beats the tackle out of his stance. He's literally ahead of the offensive lineman because he knows exactly what's coming and when it's coming, and he just beats him to the spot. And TJ's not – he's fast, don't get me wrong, but it's not like he is just this, quick twitch, absurd athlete where he's beating people off the edge all day long. That's exactly because he has studied the people and their movements, and he knows exactly what's coming, when it's coming. What a freak. And I think he's willing the Steelers defense to victories with the splash that he's creating. And it's not just the sacks. His pressure single-handedly creates the Patrick Peterson interception that leads to the go-ahead touchdown in that Raiders game. It's not just the sacks. It's not just 2 plays a game. It's way more than that. And I think we need to be talking about him even more. He's been incredible.
I want to ask you, I obviously want to continue to come back to this and have this conversation, but I don't know that we've talked about this. Was there any part of you that was a little bit worried about how he would come back from the injuries? You know, the groin thing in 21 last year with the pec and the little bit of a knee cleanup that he had done as well in that time off. Was there any part of you that wondered what version of TJ Watt we would get this year?
Yeah, I think especially because, it was pretty clear when he came back that he wasn't 100%. And, if he had come back, let's say he had taken longer to come back, but when he came back at the end of the year, like he just looked like old TJ. I think maybe you'd have come into the season sort of expecting, maybe not this, because this is completely unprecedented in the history of the game, but, normal TJ Watt. But I think maybe because of the injury, I do think expectations were a bit more muted for TJ this year, just in terms of would he be as good as he was in 2021 again this year, coming back from not just the pec, but as you mentioned, the knee injury, and he had like a rib injury too, right? He had like 3 injuries last year.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the rib. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, he's got to stay healthy in order to, we're talking about on pace for, that doesn't mean anything if he goes out and misses 5 games. But man, he's been so good. And I mean, I think it's insane to say this, but TJ Watt has vastly exceeded my expectations for this season so far.
What do you think it is just a matter of, where he's at mentally now, knowing what tackles are going to do? That is the difference for why this is the best version. Cause like he was in the defensive player of the year conversation in 19 and 20 before winning it in 21. And now if we're saying this is the best version of him, like what makes it the best version of him?
I think it's the combination of like years of that kind of work paying off and then still being physically near the top of his game. Like I think there's these 2 curves to a football player's career, right? Where like athletic ability starts at the top and only ever goes down, and knowledge of the game starts at the bottom and only ever goes up, right? Like if you kind of graph those 2 lines, and I think TJ is kind of at a point where he still has all of his athletic ability. He's not old enough that there's been a physical decline because of age, and he's been able to fully recover from the injuries that he's had. But also now years of that kind of study where like he's able to say like, oh, I remember this play from the last time the Raiders played us and they got me on it. I'm going to watch it over and over again to make sure that I can pick it out this time and I don't get got. Like you don't have that when you're a younger player, right? You've got other stuff to worry about. You're more worried about what you're doing and knowing where to go and being on the same page with the rest of your defense. I think TJ is just at the point now where he is really able to spend some time on those nitty-gritty details and really master them in a way that makes him so special.
Yeah. I mean, it's been fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see how he adds to that. Because again, you mentioned like it's not like he's played a bunch of bad offensive lines in these first 3 games either. Now we're talking about this Texans one.
He could have like 4 more in this game. Like that's real. Like if you were putting an over/under line for gambling for TJ Watt's sacks in this game, I haven't looked it up, so this is off the cuff. Where would you put it?
Yeah, I mean, like being, I guess kind of, you could almost say it's being generous to Houston, but it's like 2.5 is where I would say it would be.
2.5 has to be it. But has that ever even happened? Has anybody ever had a 2.5 sacks line coming into a game? Like that's got to be absurd.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, what's your feel though on the other side, with Alex Highsmith, who now we know, like, it doesn't look like Laremy Tunsil is going to be back either. Like, how do you, how do you balance it?
The limiting factor for TJ Watt might be being the first Steelers player to the quarterback. That could be the hardest part of this game for him. Absolutely. And look, up the middle. I mean, hey,
yeah.
I think the Steelers miscast Kendrick Green, and the biggest mistake they made was assuming that he could play center, and not that like he was just this unplayable football player that they totally whiffed on. I think he's a good athlete in space. I think he can be a good run blocker, but he's not a great pass blocker either. I mean, I think Keanu Benton could get back there again in this game too. I think you could see a lot of guys contribute. I don't expect the Steelers to blitz much. So I do think it's more of like a 4 down lineman kind of game. Do we want to get into that now? Because I think that's the part of this game the way I see this game playing out, I think that's an important part of the story. NFL Next Gen Stats does a good job of tracking all sorts of things, and they send out a newsletter each week with some of the interesting things about the game that they've seen or they've found. And I think they highlighted this week CJ Stroud and his ability to continue to be a very good quarterback while being blitzed, which is not necessarily usually the case when you're talking about a rookie. So I don't really think, if you think about the way the Steelers have handled some athletic quarterbacks in the past, sometimes I think the game plan has been kind of hands off, right? Where it's like, hey, just let this guy beat us with his arm kind of thing. And I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Steelers blitzes. I think we're going to see a lot of four-man rush, assume those four guys can beat the five that Houston is going to put out there and make CJ Stroud make those throws, as opposed to kind of giving him that sort of, if you're a quarterback who's good against the blitz honestly gives you kind of the blueprint. Like, oh, where do I throw? Well, if I don't know where to throw, the blitz is telling me, right? Oh, here's where the blitzer's coming. That's where the ball needs to go to. If you're having a harder time doing that, maybe you don't blitz a guy. So I kind of feel like that's the Steelers' best defensive game plan for this. And so I think it's going to be a lot of 4-on-5, and I think the Steelers should feel good about that.
Well, that's what I just say. That even kind of plays to the Steelers' hand as well, with their ability to get after the quarterback, the state of the Texans' offensive line. The Steelers also, we've talked about the sacks, the pressures they have, also 8 takeaways through 3 weeks, leading the NFL. So, I mean, CJ Stroud has not thrown an interception. We talked about the line for TJ Watt with sacks. Predictively, do you think that we see CJ Stroud's first interception come in this football game?
Yeah, I feel like every quarterback or offense that plays the Steelers, and it's like, oh, you haven't given up a sack, you haven't thrown an interception, you haven't fumbled with the ball. Like, this will be the game that happens. Like, this defense is sort of defying characterization because generally I think we talk about great defenses as units that prevent scoring and or prevent yards from being gained, right? I mean, those are kind of the classic ways to define defensive greatness. But when you're taking away the ball as much as the Steelers are, and when you're getting sacks and drawing penalties at the level that the Steelers are, you're just wrecking drives with one play over and over again. And so, like, it's honestly like a different kind of greatness that I think I would be really interested to maybe like play around with, like EPA per play or like something like that, where like there's got to be a metric here, maybe like win probability or something like that. But like the way this defense is creating splash at such a high level is really just it's like off the charts good. Like I don't know, I even really know how to describe it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, so I look at this matchup. If they are only going to be, rushing 4 and dropping everybody else, it's going to be interesting. Like, what kind of like packages do we see in this game? Could this be a game where we do see, more of Joey Porter Jr.? Could we see an increase in snaps again? Could we see a lot of like 3 safety stuff with Keanu Neal on the field as well? Like, predictively from this defense, what type of packages do you think that we see a lot of?
I think that kind of really leaves them available to play a lot of different stuff. I doubt we'll see as much base as we have in the first 3 weeks. That feels like more for those more run heavy teams. And not that Damian Pierce isn't a good running back, but he is not those first 3 guys, very clearly. And so I think this feels to me like a lot of nickel game where we'll see a lot of Shannon Sullivan. I think it could be a game where we see some of more than we've seen of Joey Porter Jr. outside and Patrick Peterson moving into the slot, especially when you think about the way the Texans can line them up. Really, I mean, I don't think their multiple tight ends or running back looks really scare anyone. Like, I feel like they're a 3 and 4 wide receiver offense more than they are like a multiple kind of like Baltimore Ravens, multiple blockers in the field kind of scheme. So I think maybe more nickel in all of its varieties, the 3 safety nickel, the standard nickel, and what I started calling the skinny nickel, which would be with Joey and Pat Pete out there. Because we have a heavy nickel with 3 safeties, and you got to come up with something else to call that version of it. So I'm calling it the skinny nickel with Patrick Peterson in the slot. I think this is a good week for that. Also, would really love to see, that I think they can use Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like when I think about what you want to do to a rookie quarterback, I think make him account for that guy, right? Like find where he is on the field every play and make that be a different spot as often as you can. And so we've seen, they use Minkah Fitzpatrick as that sort of de facto slot corner in that 3 safety nickel. We've seen them use him as a de facto outside corner in a 3-4-3 safety look. I expect them to do a little bit of that and a little bit of everything else. Just pick a spot, and you'll probably see 39 there at least once, just to keep CJ Stroud looking for that guy to make sure he's not throwing at him. And I think the combination of kind of keep him in the pocket, don't let him use his legs, and make him make plays through the air by analyzing where you have your guys on defense are, give TJ and Alex Highsmith time to get to the quarterback. It seems like a very, very winnable game plan for the Steelers defense.
Predictably, Minkah, that's the guy I think gets one on Sunday. What about Desmond King?
I picked in my pregame primer for the Raiders game. I said the Steelers would get an interception, and then I said, well, that's not. I make a bold prediction in that one. I was like, well, that's not bold enough. So I said that Joey would get one, and of course the outside corners get 3 interceptions, and it was not Joey. But I was close. Minkah getting an interception doesn't feel especially bold either anymore. No. He's that good too, but certainly could see this being the week that he gets one.
What about Desmond King? 0 defensive snaps on Sunday, just 7 on special teams. This is going to be a little bit of a revenge game for him going back to Houston. Do we see any type of increased role?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially because now I think this week, here's the thing. If Gunner's healthy, does he play? I think that's a real question mark. I could see Gunner getting that helmet back and Desmond King going back to the press box because they only dressed 4 wide receivers for the last game.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel like that's something they want to make a habit of. Although, Boykin didn't really play that much, and Gunner didn't play that much in the game where he got hurt. So, I mean, it's not a sure thing, but I think it's very possible that if Gunner's healthy, that he takes that spot back. But if he doesn't, I would think the number of nickel reps that we're talking about could mean some playing time for Desmond King in that nickel spot. If he's going to have a helmet anyway, and you're going to play a ton of nickel, why not use him? I think that could be a thing that we could see, but we'll see. I'm not sure about that one. We'll see how the week plays out. They have a bunch of other injuries that kind of Mike Tomlin sort of glossed over after the game, but then he brought up on Tuesday guys like Allen Robinson, James Daniels. So we'll see where the whole injury picture stands later in the week, see who's getting the helmet and who's not. But if he is going to play, I can see Desmond King being useful in that role, given how much nickel I expect him to play.
Gotcha. Okay. Alan, what do you think about getting a couple things from YouTube here? I do want to.
Yeah, let's do it.
Smitty Franklin, by the way, great name. They will be at the Texans game, but they do not have a smoker in the back of their pickup truck. So that's going to be.
Well, you still got 3 days to get one. That's
yeah. Did mention about JJ going to the Texans Ring of Honor too. I almost keep forgetting that's happening, but that really jacked up the ticket prices for this game as opposed to all the other Houston Texans home games. So that'll be a cool moment.
I have an email from one of those Vivid Seats or one of those people that I am expecting to say, I haven't opened it yet. I'm expecting to say that 94% of the tickets that have sold have been to people from Pittsburgh or something absurd like that about this game. It just feels like that. It feels like another one's coming to me. And with all due respect to Houston, not as difficult of an assignment to take over that stadium as it is the Raiders for their home opener. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of black and gold again. I'm jacked up about this game. By the way, have we talked about what I'm doing here? I'm flying to Dallas, and I'm covering West Virginia on Saturday at TCU.
Oh. No, I didn't know this.
I've never covered a West Virginia game. I've never covered a game at TCU. And so I'm fired up about that for our brother site there, West Virginia Sports Now. So that should be fun. I'm excited. And then I'm driving from Dallas. So that's like an early game. And then I'm driving from Dallas to Houston that night. And then I have Steelers and Texans on Sunday. So I'm fired up. I haven't done any like dumb Allen driving stuff in a while. So this is if you're new to the me experience, this is not a new thing, but this will be the first and probably really only one of these this year. I don't really see the schedule lining up for this sort of nonsense to occur too often for me. But back when I was covering the Steelers and Pitt and high school football all at the same time, I'd frequently have these sort of multiple stop weekends or add in like the Pirates and Pitt football and Pitt basketball. And I've done some crazy stuff in my day. This one, relatively calmly, just a little 3-hour post-game drive there.
Yeah, that's it.
That's not really that big of a deal, but yeah.
Think about how many times you could play. Think about how many times you could play our intro music on that ride, just on a loop.
I think I might get tired of it if I was.
Yeah, at some point, I'm sure you
would.
That's
about what it would take. That's about what it would take.
Monongahela Mike also mentioned about Keanu Benton, who has impressed.
We should be thankful is still alive after his mother-in-law comment a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's be glad that Mike is okay, and let's hope that his marriage is too. Continue about Mike's comment here.
Yeah, Keanu Benton, who's impressed in limited snaps. Do you think that there's a chance that he takes on an increased role? Obviously, still no Cam Hayward. Could we expect his snaps to continue to jump, or is he kind of like, is he where the team expects him to be at? And just this is kind of his role.
I think we should expect to see his snaps grow. I think I could make a very good case that he should be the starting nose tackle over Mont Adams, and that they should move Mont to a starter at that 4-3 4-man front defensive tackle, where like you could really split those roles up to be okay. In base defense, it's Ogunjobi, Benton, Leal, and then when you go to the 4-man front, it would be Larry and it would be Adams. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think you could do that. You could make that happen by dressing Braden Fehoko, scratching Isaiah Loudermilk, who didn't get very many reps last week anyway. And you could make Fehoko the backup nose tackle and just play Mont as a 3-tech and just play Benton as the nose and sort of make him a de facto starter there. And then, look, he would get in the rotation behind Larry and he would probably be in that second group with Armand Watts to come in and play some 3-tech behind Adams and Larry. I think that to me is the way I would deploy the defensive line to maximize everyone's abilities. And it would not surprise me if we see that, but this is not a big base defense week. So I think in general, you're going to see his role continue to increase, but maybe specifically not this week, just because I don't think you're going to see a lot of nose tackle played by the Steelers this week.
Right, and that makes sense. But yeah, Keanu Benton, definitely the early returns. He's impressed. Got his first sack on Sunday night.
Man, he was really the one guy on this rookie class that you kind of looked at where he was drafted and where the Steelers took him. And you said, okay. Like every other guy, I think the Steelers got well after they were expected to be drafted. Where especially like Porter in the second round, Washington falling deep into the third round, trading down, still getting Washington, and then getting Nick Herbig. Like every other move early in this draft class, we kind of talked about Omar the King, the Steelers just everything fell perfectly for him. That was the one where I felt like maybe he got drafted a bit ahead of where the consensus was for him. And it sure looks like they nailed that one too, right? Like he looks like he could be the best player in this rookie class. Like certainly the way he's contributing to the game right now is certainly ahead of where everybody else is.
Yeah, I loved the pick. I was super high on him, probably higher than most people. I felt like there was no way they were leaving draft weekend without either one of him or Devon Dexter, and they got him. So I was super happy.
I really liked him too. I just kind of figured nose tackles, not that big in the game. It kind of felt like more of a third-round pick to me. Obviously, 49 isn't that far from the third round, but he was a guy that really popped for me and Nick when we were down at the Senior Bowl, and I think his play in that Wisconsin defense, just being so similar to the Steelers, makes a lot of sense for him being an early contributor here and a guy that was able to pick things up right away. Also, to quote Carl Dunbar, you don't have to be smart to play defensive line. There's only one way to go towards the football. It's not complicated. So
that's amazing.
I love it. And but he's been great, man.
All right. Well, we will leave it at that for today. Alan, you can tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X. At PGH Steelers Now is the site's account there. SteelersNow.com. Got to go there to read the words. Derek Bell, great breakdown today on some hope for the Steelers running game, which I have not felt in quite some time. Got to be an SN Plus subscriber to get that one. Get 10% off and use the code Allen10 on a 1-year subscription. We really want to have you over there. That is the money that goes to doing cool stuff like me being in Houston this week. And so definitely appreciate everyone that goes over there and subscribes. Also, subscribe and click the bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel. If that's where you're watching, we are this close, a Mario Lemieux away from 10,000. And we got some giveaways coming up. We are giving away a Steelers jersey. I'm not telling you who it is, but if someone guesses correctly, I might give them like some bonus entries or something. It is also not, I'll give 2 today. It is not Mason Rudolph, and it is not Mitch Trubisky. So I've already ruled out Kenny Pickett. So it is not a quarterback. We're not giving away a quarterback.
I know Steelers fans are going to be super upset that it's not Mason Rudolph.
There's at least like 2, and if you're on Twitter, you know exactly who those 2 guys are.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of Twitter, you can find me at Zachary Smith PGH on there, on everywhere. As Alan said, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments so we can read those on tomorrow's episode. If you're listening somewhere else, leave us a 5-star review there. We appreciate you can find us on Apple, Spotify, any podcast platform, wherever you can find your podcast. Other than that, for Alan Saunders, for Zachary Smith, this has been Steelers Afternoon Drive. Thanks for jumping in and taking another ride with us.